So there are some hot names in the NFL draft right now. And again, this we go through these cycles, right? I mean, for the longest time, it's been the quarterbacks, and that's been the hot properties and different things like that. But there are three names in particular that I'm pointing at because they tie directly into the Atlanta Falcons. Okay. The three names. First is Tyree Wilson. There are a lot of people think that Tyree Wilson is an elite pass rusher, that he is a guy who, with the size and everything like that, he can be a dominant player at the NFL level. Okay. Next guy, Miles Murphy. I've seen a lot of reports that are coming out now about the idea of Miles Murphy may be the second best edge player only behind Will Anderson of Alabama. That he may be that Miles Murphy, the scouting is that his athleticism, his size, he can play the run, he can do just about everything. That he is becoming the hot property of NFL teams. And then obviously the other one is a guy that's meeting with the Falcons this week is Jalen Carter. And we know that his athleticism, we know that his ability, he might be the best player, he might be the best talent, I should say, in the NFL draft. All of that is come together, and for all the things that people want to point to in the, on the off-field stuff and different things like that, can completely understand that. But you can't deny what his talent is on the football field. You can't deny that he's been one of the best defenders for the best defense in America over the last couple of years. And for a program that churns out all kinds of high caliber defensive players, you can't deny what his talent is. So Tyree Wilson, Miles Murphy, Jalen Carter. Okay. Why do I bring those names up? Not just because that they're hot prospects and they're making a name for themselves and they're moving up the draft boards, if you will. I don't know how that happens, but again, if you believe that the hype and the hoopla and different things like that, they're moving up the draft boards and all this good kind of stuff, right? I bring them up because the Atlanta Falcons are going to have a chance to get their hands on one or a couple of those guys that are going to be available at number 8. Now, I don't know if Wilson's going to be available at 8. I don't think that Murphy won't be available at 8. I think he's the most likely guy to be available at 8. I don't know if Jalen Carter is going to be available at 8. But this is where I talk about that you by even just sitting at 8, because again, I know the idea, oh, well, we can trade back and all this. Okay, well, somebody has to trade up, right? I mean, for there has to be that equal and opposite reaction to what you want to do. Somebody has to want to covet your pick to go up to number 8, wherever that person is, wherever that spot is in the draft pecking order. Somebody has to want to go up and make a move on all of this. But Murphy, Wilson, and Carter, one of those guys or multiples of those guys are going to be there for the Falcons to draft. And this is why I've talked about don't overthink this. Don't oversimplify. Don't think too deep about this. Pick one of those three guys if they're available, and they certainly will be, because again, I still think the quarterbacks are going. I think the first 7 picks are going to have at least 3, if not a 4th quarterback. And Will Anderson's going to be in that mix. And yeah, Wilson or Carter or Murphy could potentially go, but you're going to get your hands on one of those guys by sitting at 8. By letting the draft unfold to you, you're going to find a way to grab a hold of one of those players. And this should be very easy for Fontenot, right? And Arthur and everybody involved in all this kind of stuff. Grab you one of those high caliber defensive players and figure out a way to get it done with adding more pass rush, adding another impact player, adding another high caliber impact young player to this defensive line. And don't monkey around with it. Now, I will say that we'll talk about this in a second here, that this could be lining up to be an offensive-minded draft when we get to the first round. But in my world, at least for what I want and at least for where I'm looking at, if those guys are the 3 players that seem to be catching some fire and catching some momentum as far as top 10 picks, right? I mean, Carter, we always knew was a guy that had, a high caliber, high ceiling. Obviously, he's maybe the best talent in the draft. We all knew that. But Carter doesn't seem to be falling as far as some people think that he's going to fall. He's certainly not going to get out of the top 10. I don't care what any mock tells you, whatever like that. He's not going to get past the Falcons, Bears, and Eagles at 8, 9, and 10. That's not going to happen. So he's going to be in the top 10, just a matter of where his actual landing spot is going to be. And Murphy is another guy who, again, I've seen that they are talking about he's the second best edge player for all the things, for his athleticism and all the things that he does. He might be the second best edge player, and literally only Will Anderson may be a better edge player than what he is. And Tyree Wilson is sort of that unknown commodity that's rising up boards. I saw something that said that, and again, I'll take all of this with a grain of salt, that Murphy could be the number 2 or number 3 pick when all is said and done. Or sorry, Tyree Wilson could be the number 2 or number 3 pick when all is said and done. Okay. I don't know that Tyree Wilson, and it's not a matter of his talent or things like that or his upside. I just don't think that when you figure quarterbacks and Will Anderson and some of those people that, he's going to be the number 2 or number 3 pick or whatever like that. But again, listen, if you want pass rush, if you want a guy who can go sack the quarterback, you have to get a little bit desperate in these things, right? You have to go grab one of these guys. So I will tell you that the Falcons are sitting in their prime position, and they can let the draft just unfold to them. Just let the draft unfold to them, okay? Yeah, it might be great if you can trade back or this or that or whatever, and, maybe you trade back to the high teens or, grab Lucas Van Ness and all that kind of stuff. But again, I keep saying that, trade can't be one-sided. A trade can't happen from just one side. Somebody has to want to get up into the number 8 spot. And the way you figure the draft capital and everything like that, it's just not advantageous for a lot of teams. When you start having to give up second and thirds and stuff like that, or, potentially, depending on where you trade from, another number 1 pick for next year, a lot of teams just don't want to do that. That's why you see these trades of just like one spot, right? You see like just one spot trades, 9 to 10, 9 and 10 flip, 8 and 9 flip, 14 and 15 flip. You see that, all the time. But the Falcons are in a prime position that they can get themselves or have a pick of 1 or 2 guys that are the hot names going into this draft. And again, we saw all this kind of shake out, right? The Falcons weren't going to be, I think, in the quarterback business. I don't think that they were going to be in that business of drafting a quarterback at number 8. Maybe unless CJ Stroud fell, but we'll talk about that in just a second here. But other than that, they've got 3 hot names that are moving up everybody's draft board. And there's no reason why the Falcons can't grab a hold of one of those guys and figure out how to add them to that defensive line when all is said and done. All right, once you make Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery your first listen, make sure you go in and leave us a comment about being an everyday listener. We want to hear from our everydayers, as we call them. So when you go listen to Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery, no matter what platform that you are on, leave us a message and leave us a note that you are an everyday listener. So we thank you so much for listening to Hittin' Hard, but make sure you leave us a note that you are an everyday listener of the program to us.